He chose another woman on their wedding night. She walked away with his rival Alpha King. Why did he choose someone else on the night they were meant to begin their life together? And why did she leave with the man he considered his greatest rival? Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Before we begin, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another unforgettable story of courage, destiny, and love. Your support helps us continue bringing these emotional journeys to life. Thank you for watching, for staying with us, and for supporting this growing community. Every view, comment, and subscription truly means so much to us. Tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from and what time is it there right now? Now let us begin the story. Do not touch the silver water, Lillian. Garrett Blackwood's voice cut through the final note of the wedding hymn. Lillian's hand stopped less than an inch above the moon basin. For one suspended heartbeat, the great hall remained painfully beautiful. White candles burned beneath silver arches. Snow pressed against the tall windows. Hundreds of nobles stood beneath the Blackwood crest, waiting for the last movement of the ceremony, the moment Lillian Hart would place her hand into the sacred water and bind her bloodline, her land, and her future to the man beside her. Less than an hour earlier, Garrett had sworn that nothing would stand between them. Now he turned away from her. Camille will complete the ceremony, he said. A woman in a pale silver gown stepped from the first row. Camille Prescott. Garrett held out his hand to her. The same hand that had placed a wedding ring on Lillian's finger. The same hand that had rested against her back while he whispered that she was safe with him. Lillian stared at him, certain that shock had distorted his words. What did you say? Garrett's expression carried no guilt, only impatience. Our spoken vows remain valid. House Hart will still join Blackwood. Hartmore will pass beneath my protection. He glanced toward Camille. But she will stand as Luna. A murmur traveled through the hall. Not surprise. Approval. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in courage and destiny, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us, love finds the broken. Now back to Lillian. She looked toward the elders seated beside the ceremonial platform. Several lowered their eyes. Others watched her with the carefully blank expressions of people who had already agreed to remain silent. They had known. The flowers, the feast, the white silk gown, every beautiful detail had been arranged around a decision made without her. How many of you knew? Lillian asked. No one answered. Garrett sighed as though her humiliation were delaying the evening. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. You will retain an honored place in my court. As what? His jaw tightened. My wife in name. Camille will perform the public duties of Luna. Camille stepped closer to him. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across her face. No one wishes to dishonor you, she said quietly. Lillian looked at the untouched basin. The water remained perfectly clear. Her blood had not entered it. The final seal had not been formed. Garrett believed the spoken vows were enough to bind her. More than that, he believed no one in the hall would dare contradict him. She slowly removed her wedding ring. Relief flashed across his face. He thought she was surrendering. Lillian placed the ring on the stone beside the basin. The small sound of silver striking marble crossed the entire hall. You asked me to stand beside you, she said. You never said you intended to use me as a key. Garrett's expression changed. Only slightly, but Lillian saw it. What key? Camille asked. Garrett ignored her. Choose your next words carefully, Lillian. No, she raised her chin, though her knees trembled beneath the silk. You should have chosen yours carefully. She turned toward the gathered court. I will not complete the seal. I will not surrender Hartmore. And I will not remain here while another woman takes the place I was promised. Garrett stepped down from the platform. You have nowhere else to go. No ruling pack will offend Blackwood for a rejected Omega. At the far end of the hall, a chair moved across the marble floor. Every head turned. Alpha King Julian Ashford rose beneath the shadow of the western balcony. Garrett's greatest rival wore no crown and no ceremonial armor. Only a black coat, a silver wolf at his collar, and the quiet authority of a man who did not need decoration to be obeyed. His steel-gray eyes moved from Garrett to Lillian. "Complete that seal," Julian said, "and she will not become your wife." The hall went still. "She will become your evidence." Garrett's shoulders stiffened. "This is a Blackwood ceremony. The lunar registry does not belong to Blackwood." A pulse of fear moved through the elders. Lillian saw it. Julian descended the steps. He did not approach her. He stopped several paces away, leaving the space around her untouched. "The final seal requires bloodline consent," he said. "House Hart was appointed guardian of the Northern Registry generations ago. Once Lillian's blood enters that basin, Garrett can claim lawful access through marriage." Camille slowly pulled her hand from Garrett's. "You told me Hartmore would transfer through the Alliance Charter." "It will," Garrett said. "Then why do you still need her blood?" He did not answer. Elder Tobias Mercer rose among the tribunal witnesses. The full silver crescent rested against his white mantle. "The bride has asked a lawful question." Garrett's voice sharpened. "This is my territory. The registry governs ancestral lands and alpha bloodlines across every northern pack," Tobias replied. "In matters of bloodline consent, no single ruler stands above covenant law." He approached the basin and studied the clear water. "The seal remains incomplete. Lillian Hart retains her name, her land, and every claim belonging to House Hart." For the first time that night, Garrett looked uncertain, only for a breath. Then he turned his anger toward Julian. "And what does Ashvale want? Do not pretend you came here out of kindness." Julian did not flinch. "My father once sought access to Hartmore's northern passage." Whispers rose around them. Lillian looked at him sharply. Julian continued before Garrett could use the admission. "I withdrew that claim 3 years ago after the mountain surveys showed the passage could endanger Hartmore's southern village. The original petition and my sealed renunciation are both held in the Moon Archive." He met Lillian's eyes. "You may read them before believing a word I say." Garrett would have hidden such a truth. Julian placed it before her willingly. Elder Tobias turned to Lillian. "You have 3 choices. You may remain here beneath tribunal observation. You may depart under your own authority. Or you may accept temporary sanctuary under the sworn protection of an outside Alpha King, until the hearing at Silver Hollow." "She cannot trust him," Garrett said. Lillian looked at the man she had nearly given everything. "I trusted you." The words were quiet. They struck harder because of it. She turned to Julian. "If I accept your protection, I have conditions." Garrett almost smiled. He expected Julian to refuse limits in front of the Northern Court. Julian remained where he was. "Name them." "You will not claim me. You will not mark me. You will not use my blood to enter Hartmore or the registry. You will not cross House Heartland without my permission. You will not confine me in Ashvale." She drew a slow breath. "And you will not speak for me before the tribunal." Julian inclined his head. "I swear to every condition." Tobias raised the silver crescent. "The oath is witnessed." Garrett's face hardened. "You are choosing from wounded pride." Lillian looked down at the discarded ring. Then she faced the man who had expected her obedience to survive any betrayal. "No. I am choosing before you can turn my silence into consent." She looked at Tobias. "I reject the unfinished bond. I request sanctuary under Alpha King Julian Ashford." The request is granted. Julian did not offer Lillian his hand. He stepped aside. He opened a path toward the doors. The meaning was clear. He was not taking her anywhere. She was deciding whether to walk. Lillian gathered the skirt of her white wedding gown and descended the ceremonial platform. Julian followed several steps behind her, close enough to prevent anyone from stopping her, far enough to keep his oath. The nobles who had watched her humiliation now lowered their eyes. Garrett's voice followed her across the hall. "You will regret this before the night is over." Lillian stopped at the carved oak doors. For years, she had mistaken patience for loyalty. She had mistaken silence for peace. She looked back. You did not lose me tonight. Garrett stared at her. You lost me every time you believed I would never leave. She pushed open the doors. Winter air flooded the hall. Snow swept across the stone steps, catching in her hair and against the white silk of her wedding gown. Julian removed his black cloak and held it out without moving closer. Lillian looked at it, then at him. Only when she reached for the cloak did he release it into her hands. The wool still held his warmth. Together, before the entire northern court, the rejected bride walked toward the carriage of Garrett Blackwood's greatest rival. But before they reached it, iron chains rattled across the outer gate. Captain Nolan Pierce stood beneath the gatehouse with 6 Blackwood guards. By order of Alpha Garrett, no member of House Hart may leave until Blackwood examines the claim over Hartmore. Garrett had moved quickly. Julian's gaze turned cold, but Lillian spoke before he could. Blackwood does not own this road. Nolan hesitated. This is Blackwood territory. Blackwood uses the northern road. It crosses House Heartland beyond the second bridge. My mother's charter grants passage. It does not grant ownership. Lady Lillian, this is not the place to argue ancient boundaries. There will never be a convenient place for someone who profits from my silence. Garrett appeared at the top of the steps. Close the gate. Lillian reached beneath her sleeve and removed her mother's bronze crest, a crescent rising above a mountain. She held it toward the guards. This mark confirms my authority over the Hart Crossing. Snow gathered on Nolan's shoulders. For a long moment, he looked between Garrett and the crest. Then he bowed. Not to Julian. Not to Blackwood. To House Hart. Open the gate. The chains rose. Garrett's voice carried through the courtyard. Ashford's family wanted Hartmore long before mine did. Lillian looked at Julian. He did not deny it. My father did, Julian said. I ended the claim. You will see the proof. That honesty mattered. Julian opened the carriage door. He waited. Lillian chose to place her hand in his. Only then did she step inside. Julian sat across from her, leaving the place beside her empty. As the carriage passed through the gate, warning bells rang across Blackwood. Lillian watched the castle lights disappear behind the snow. She had left without servants, jewels, or even a change of clothes. Yet beneath Julian's cloak, with the Hart crest pressed into her palm, she possessed something Garrett had never intended to give her. Her own future. Ashvale appeared at dawn, rising between snow-covered mountains like a dark crown carved from stone. Lillian expected iron gates and rows of soldiers. Instead, she saw stable hands leading tired horses beneath covered arches. Bakers carried fresh bread toward the lower village. Children swept snow from the steps of a public hall. Power lived there. But it did not appear to demand that everyone tremble before it. When the carriage stopped, Julian stepped down first. He did not reach for her. He waited until Lillian nodded. Only then did he offer his hand. The touch lasted no longer than necessary. Your chamber is in the east wing, he said. No one will enter without permission. And the guards? At the outer walls. None outside my room? None. He placed a brass key in her palm. It opens your chamber, the east gate, and the private road to the village. Lillian studied the key. You are giving me a way to leave. I gave you my word. No promise Garrett had ever made had unsettled her as deeply as that simple answer. The chamber door locked only from within. The window opened without a guard beneath it. A deep green wool dress lay beside the bed, practical and warm, bearing no Ashvale crest. Julian had not merely spoken about freedom. He had built it into the room. But sleep did not come. Every time Lillian closed her eyes, she saw Garrett reaching for Camille while the court watched. She remembered the years of small concessions. The times he had asked her to remain quiet for the sake of peace. The meetings where he had praised her patience before making decisions about Hartmore without her. By dawn she had begun to understand. The wedding had not changed Garrett. It had only revealed him. At midday, Lillian followed the scent of bread into the lower hall. Nearly 30 displaced women and children sat at long tables. Their clothes were worn from travel. Many carried the careful expressions of people who had learned that being noticed could be dangerous. A little girl with pale blonde hair looked at Julian's cloak over Lillian's shoulders. That belongs to the king. He lent it to me. The girl nodded seriously. He lends things. He does not take them back until you are finished. Her mother hurried over. Forgive her, my lady. We came from the eastern border. Lillian looked around. All of you. The woman nodded. Blackwood seized our farms after we failed to meet the winter grain levy. They said our land would become royal storehouses. Garrett had told Lillian those levies repaired roads and protected poor settlements. Who signed the orders? Garrett Blackwood and his council. The little girl removed a silver bracelet from her pocket. A tiny oak leaf was engraved into the metal. My father gave me this before they took our home. Lillian knew the design. She had seen dozens of similar heirlooms in Garrett's treasury, each labeled as a willing tribute. Where is your father? The child looked down. Her mother answered. He vanished after questioning the digging beneath our fields. The room seemed to grow colder. Garrett had not wanted grain. He had wanted whatever lay beneath those farms. The wedding betrayal was not the beginning of his deception. It was merely the first lie he could no longer hide. Julian found Lillian after sunset, still holding the bracelet. He stopped across from the table. May I sit? She nodded. Only then did he pull out the chair. Lillian placed the bracelet between them. Garrett displayed these in his treasury. Julian's eyes sharpened. They were taken from seized homes. You knew. I suspected. Suspicion is not enough to accuse a ruler before the tribunal. He opened a leather map case. Old lines crossed the northern mountains, converging beneath Hartmoor. 5 bloodlines vanished from Blackwood's covenant rolls in one winter, he said. Their families still lived, but according to the official record, they had never owned land. He erased them. He tested how much history he could remove before anyone powerful noticed. Julian unfolded a second map. A circular chamber lay beneath the mountain, surrounded by ancient symbols. The lunar registry. Lillian traced the faded outline. What is inside? The original bloodline seals, land covenants, and leadership oaths of every northern pack. It can prove which families own their land and which alpha lines rule lawfully. Understanding settled over her. If Garrett changes those records, he could declare other alpha lines illegitimate and force their packs beneath Blackwood. My blood opens the chamber. Yes. Julian placed 2 parchments in front of her. The first was his father's petition for access to Hartmoor. The second was Julian's renunciation. The seals were intact. Why show me proof that your family wanted the same thing? She asked. Because trust built on missing truth is another trap. The answer reached deeper than she wanted it to. She looked toward the fire. My father kept House Hart's oldest covenants in Blackwood's library. There is a hidden cabinet behind his writing desk. Returning would place you within Garrett's reach. Camille's Luna ceremony is in 3 nights. Every guard and noble will be watching the moon courtyard. Julian studied her. You already know how to enter. The abandoned west greenhouse connects to a servant's passage beneath the library. He did not order her to remain in Ashvale. He did not say the danger was too great for her. He began asking about entrances, guards, locks, and the distance from the library to the tribunal bell. When she finished, he placed a silver token bearing the full crescent between them. Tobias gave me this. It allows a lawful heir to retrieve family records for a pending hearing. And if Garrett finds us? We take the evidence to the north courtyard and ring the bell 3 times. Tribunal wardens are waiting at the old abbey. You cannot enter Blackwood with an army. I will not. He folded the maps. 2 riders will wait beyond the western ridge. No one crosses Blackwood's boundary unless the bell sounds. Fear tightened around Lillian's ribs. Julian saw it. You may decide not to go, he said. No one here will think less of you. For the first time since the wedding, Lillian allowed herself to admit that she was afraid. Then she looked at the silver bracelet. I am not going back for Garrett. Her fingers closed around her mother's crest. I am going back for every name he believed no one would defend. Julian inclined his head. Then we follow your path. That night, Lillian found him alone on the western balcony. Snow had stopped falling. The valley below glowed beneath a pale moon. Julian stood without his coat, sleeves rolled to his forearms as he repaired the broken hinge of a wooden nesting box. Lillian stared. You repair birdhouses? One birdhouse, he said. Badly. She almost smiled. The expression felt strange on her face. Julian set down the tool. You should be sleeping. So should you. I rarely do before entering an enemy castle. The word enemy should have frightened her. Instead, his honesty steadied her. Lillian moved to the stone railing. Why did you rise in the wedding hall? Julian remained quiet for a moment. Because everyone else remained seated. That is not an answer. No. He looked toward the valley. I knew Garrett wanted the registry. I attended to watch the seal. But I did not know he intended to humiliate you. So you acted for Hartmore. At first. The words should have hurt. But he continued. Then you removed the ring. Lillian looked at him. You were shaking, Julian said. Everyone saw it. Garrett thought fear meant you would obey. But you looked at a hall full of people who had already abandoned you. And you still said no. His voice lowered. I had seen powerful rulers do less with armies behind them. Lillian swallowed. Do not turn me into something brave because you need me to be. I will not. He faced her fully. You were afraid. You walked anyway. Silence settled between them. Not empty. Gentle. Julian lifted one hand, then stopped before touching a loose strand of hair near her cheek. May I? Lillian's breath caught. She nodded. His fingers brushed the strand away. Nothing more. But the careful warmth of that touch traveled through every place Garrett's betrayal had left cold. Julian stepped back first. You should rest. Lillian looked at the repaired nesting box. The hinge is crooked. I told you. Badly. This time she did smile. And for one brief moment beneath the winter moon, she remembered that her heart was wounded. Not dead. 3 nights later, Blackwood Castle blazed with silver lanterns. Music poured from the moon courtyard as nobles gathered for Camille's Luna ceremony. Lillian stood among the pines in a charcoal cloak. Julian waited beside her without a crown, banner, or guard. Once we enter, he said, we follow your route. And if Garrett finds us? I stop him from taking the evidence. He met her eyes. You decide when we leave. They crossed the snow toward the abandoned greenhouse. Frost covered the glass. Dead vines curled around the stone frame. Lillian pressed her bronze crest into a hollow beneath the door handle. A hidden latch opened. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and frozen soil. The servants' passage was narrow and dark. As a child, Lillian had followed her father through it while he inspected the archives. Garrett had once praised her for moving through the castle without disturbing important people. Now the invisibility he had valued carried her toward the truth. The hidden library waited behind a faded blue tapestry. Her crest opened the carved door. Moonlight spilled across shelves thick with dust. Her father's writing desk stood untouched. Lillian knelt and pressed the crest beneath the center drawer. A secret panel opened. Ledgers filled the first shelf. Bloodline covenants filled the second. On the third rested a blue journal and several letters tied with dark green ribbon. The first letter bore her name. My dearest daughter. Her hands began to shake. Henry Hart wrote that Garrett intended to alter the lunar registry and erase rival alpha lines. He had prepared to testify, but someone inside the tribunal had warned Blackwood. The final lines blurred before Lillian's eyes. If they tell you I died, do not believe them. I was taken to St. Briar Monastery beneath a forged tribunal order. The brothers believe they are protecting a witness. Elder Crow has blocked every message I attempted to send. Trust Tobias. But remember this, the traitor will stand beside you when the bell rings. My father is alive. The words barely escaped her. Julian moved toward her. His hand stopped near her shoulder. Lillian closed the remaining distance herself. For one breath, she pressed her forehead against his chest. Julian did not wrap his arms around her until she gripped the front of his coat. Only then did he hold her. Not tightly. Not possessively. Simply enough to keep her standing. "We will find him," he said. Footsteps sounded beyond the tapestry. Lillian pulled away and gathered the documents into a leather satchel. The library door opened. Garrett stood beneath the arch in ceremonial black. Camille's lunar ribbon fastened across his chest. 2 councilmen waited behind him. His gaze moved from Julian to the satchel. "I knew you would come back." The old fear rose inside Lillian. Then her fingers touched the tribunal token beneath her sleeve. She was not trapped. "Give me the records," Garrett said. "I will restore your position. You may govern Hartmoor beside me. Camille can retain the ceremonial title. You speak of restoring what was never yours to take. You are making this harder than it needs to be. And when you no longer need either of us?" His silence answered. A figure appeared behind him. Camille. Her veil was gone. She held a folded decree in both hands. "He already chose the woman after me," she said. Garrett turned. Camille raised the paper. "This decree names another Luna after Hartmoor transfers. It orders my removal for disloyalty. You misunderstand." "No." Tears filled her eyes, but her voice remained steady. "I finally understand exactly what I was worth to you." Camille crossed to the fireplace and pressed a carved stone. A narrow panel opened into the north passage. She looked at Lillian. For one moment they were not rivals. They were 2 women who had been measured only by their usefulness to the same man. "Go," Camille whispered. "Ring the bell." Lillian ran. The satchel struck against her side as she raced through the narrow passage. Julian followed. Behind them, Garrett shouted for the guards. The passage opened into the north courtyard. At its center stood the ancient tribunal bell. Dark metal. Frozen rope. Open moonlight. Music still played in the distant ceremonial hall. Lillian crossed the courtyard and seized the rope. "Once you ring it," Julian said, "the accusation belongs to the tribunal." Lillian thought of her father. The little girl's bracelet. Every erased family. Good. She pulled. The first strike rolled across Blackwood like thunder. Music stopped. Windows opened. Servants stepped into the arches. Lillian pulled again. The second note struck the castle walls and returned like an answer. Guards rushed into the courtyard. Garrett emerged from the passage as Lillian reached for the rope a third time. "Do not do this." For years that voice had shaped her choices. Now it sounded smaller than the truth in her hands. Garrett moved toward her. "You are frightened. You are confused. Give me the satchel, and I will forgive this." Lillian's grip tightened. "You still believe forgiveness is yours to give. You have no idea what will happen if those records are opened." "I know exactly what will happen." She looked toward the nobles gathering beneath the arches. "People will remember their names." Garrett's eyes shifted toward the guards. "Stop her." No one moved. Julian stood between them without drawing his sword. Garrett's wolf flashed behind his eyes. "You would start a war over her?" Julian's voice remained calm. "No." He glanced at Lillian. "She is ending one." Garrett lunged for the rope. Lillian pulled with both hands. The third strike split the night. The sound traveled beyond the walls across the frozen road, toward the old abbey. Then silence fell. A different sound answered. Horses. Dozens of them. Garrett stopped. Under Northern Covenant, the third bell placed every ruler named in the accusation beneath tribunal authority until the evidence could be secured. Camille entered the courtyard carrying the decree. She tore the lunar ribbon from Garrett's chest and let it fall into the snow. "He promised me Hartmoor," she announced. "Then he planned to discard me when the transfer was complete." The northern gate opened. Silver-cloaked wardens rode beneath the full crescent. Elder Tobias dismounted at their center. "The accusation stands," he declared. All named records are now protected. One warden approached Lillian. His cloak appeared ordinary. Then moonlight touched the clasp. A broken crescent. Her father's warning returned. The traitor will stand beside you when the bell rings. Give me the satchel, the man said. I will secure it. Lillian stepped back. No. He produced a folded order. Immediate transfer to the Eastern Archive. Tobias took the parchment. He examined the wax. One curve of the crescent had been pressed backward. This order is false. The man's confidence broke. Tobias pointed toward him. Place him under guard. The false warden looked instinctively toward one of the tribunal carriages. Tobias noticed. Record where he looked. A recorder entered with 2 witnesses. Every ledger, covenant, and letter was counted aloud. Each item was wrapped in linen and marked with 3 seals. The tribunal crescent, the recorder's sign, and the bronze crest of House Hart. Only after the final seal was pressed did Lillian release the satchel. Garrett stood beneath neutral guard. For the first time, no one lowered their eyes for him. The hearing at Silver Hollow opened 7 days later. Winter light poured through the round windows of the tribunal hall. Lillian entered carrying only her mother's crest. Julian walked beside her. He did not touch the documents. He did not speak for her. Garrett sat across the chamber without the Blackwood crest. Camille waited at a separate table. One chair among the tribunal elders remained empty. Tobias raised the full crescent. Lillian Hart, present your claim. For one moment the silence felt like the wedding hall. Hundreds of eyes. A powerful man waiting for her to falter. Then Lillian remembered the 3 bells. She stepped forward. These records show false levies, unlawful seizures, and payments made to erase bloodlines from Blackwood's covenant rolls. Families testified. A farmer described losing land held by his family for 5 generations. A mother presented an order that renamed her home as royal storage property. The little girl from Asheville placed her silver bracelet on the evidence table. My father said our name mattered, she whispered. Then the record said we never owned anything. Garrett leaned forward. Hard winters require difficult decisions. Lillian opened the blue journal. Then why were excavations ordered beneath those farms? The altered records formed a single path toward Hartmoor. Each erased family had lived above an entrance connected to the registry. Garrett looked toward Julian. Ashford's family wanted the passage too. Julian rose. My father petitioned for it. He placed both documents before the recorder. The petition. And my renunciation. Garrett gave a cold smile. A convenient act of virtue. Julian met his gaze. No. A correction made before anyone forced me to make it. Camille testified next. I believed I had been chosen, she said. I was only the next tool. The false warden confessed that Elder Benedict Crow had ordered him to seize the satchel. The broken crescent beneath Crow's private mark matched the forged orders in Garrett's payment ledger. The empty tribunal chair no longer represented an absence. It represented guilt. Before the final judgment, the great doors opened. A messenger from St. Briar Monastery entered carrying a sealed statement. From Henry Hart. Lillian forgot how to breathe. The statement confirmed everything. Garrett had discovered Henry's investigation. Crow had issued a false order placing him under sacred protection at the monastery. Every letter Henry sent had been intercepted. He was alive. Weak but alive. And preparing to return. Garrett's face finally lost its certainty. Judgment came before sunset. Garrett was removed as Alpha. Crow was stripped of office and placed beneath permanent tribunal custody. Every erased bloodline was restored. Seized lands were ordered returned. The registry would no longer answer to one ruler or one tribunal elder. It would require 3 independent seals. Tobias turned toward Julian. Asheville may accept temporary authority over Blackwood until its households form a council. Julian answered without hesitation. It offers an opportunity. He looked toward the Blackwood families. It does not make the opportunity just. He refused the territory. Lillian watched him give away power before anyone could accuse him of taking it. That was when she understood the difference between protection and possession. Garrett had believed strength meant holding everything within reach. Julian knew strength could also mean opening his hand. 6 months later, spring returned to Hartmoor. Green spread across the mountain slopes. Snowmelt filled the streams. The southern village reopened its market beneath banners bearing every restored family crest. The lunar registry now rested behind 3 seals. One belonged to the northern Pax, one to the tribunal, and one to Lillian Hart. No single crown could open it. No ruler could erase a family alone. Lillian became keeper of the registry, answerable to the covenant rather than any throne. Camille remained in Hartmoor by choice. She wore no lunar ribbon. She asked for no title. Instead, she helped displaced families compare Blackwood's altered ledgers with the original records. Some received her with suspicion. Others offered cautious forgiveness. Camille accepted both. "I spent too long believing that being chosen made me valuable," she told Lillian one afternoon. She looked toward the restored names. "Now I am learning that what I choose matters more." Lillian understood. In early April, a monastery carriage appeared on the western road. Lillian saw it from the archive steps. The door opened. Henry Hart stepped down. His hair had turned nearly white. His shoulders were thinner than she remembered. But when he saw her, his face became her father's again. Lillian ran. She crossed the courtyard before dignity could slow her. Henry opened his arms. They held each other beneath the flowering pear trees while the village bells rang without command. Not for accusation. For return. "You kept our name alive," he whispered. Lillian closed her eyes. "You taught me it belonged to more than one person." Julian remained in Ashvale. He sent builders only when Hartmoor requested them. Teachers only when the village council approved. Grain only when the spring stores ran low. His letters carried no instructions and no expectation. He wrote about ordinary things. A library roof repaired after winter. A young apprentice learning patience. A birdhouse with a hinge he still had not fixed properly. He never asked when Lillian would choose him. His silence became its own kind of devotion. When the valley flowers opened along the lower road, Lillian wrote 7 words. "Come when the valley flowers open again." Julian arrived 3 days later. No crown. No royal banner. No armed procession. He brought books for the village school and a young pear tree for Henry's courtyard. Lillian met him beside the registry steps. She wore a deep green dress. The brass key he had given her in Ashvale hung from a chain at her waist. Julian noticed it. "You kept the key." It opened more than a door. He looked toward the restored archive. "I did not come to ask you to become my Luna. I know. I came to ask whether I may stand beside you while you remain exactly who you are." Lillian studied him. The man who had never confused love with ownership. The king who had offered truth before asking for trust. The rival alpha who had followed her out of a wedding hall, but had never once demanded that she follow him. She placed her hand in his. Their bonding ceremony took place at sunset beneath the restored crests of Hartmoor. There was no transfer of land. No surrender of name. No promise of obedience. When Julian asked permission to kiss her, Lillian smiled through her tears. "Yes." He touched her face with the same careful gentleness he had shown beneath the winter moon. Then he kissed her. Around them the bells began to ring. Once Lillian had walked away because a powerful man believed he had chosen her future. Now beneath the open sky she chose it for herself. And the Alpha King did not stand before her. He stood beside her.